It's not important really who I am, but I think people do want to know who is this person behind the front. Well, I was born a long time ago in Sramban in 1940, just before the war. I lost my mother when I was 6 because of lack of medical care. Soon after that, we had the communist insurgency, and I lost my father to that. By 12, I was an orphan. Luckily for me, I was then taken over by my aunt, who was a very staunch Buddhist from Sri Lanka. That faith that she had in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, she passed on to me. That's actually where I began. I can still remember every evening without fail at 6 o'clock, she would gather all of us and we would pray. We would do the puja. We did it and it became part of us. All right, all of that until I reached Form 5 in St. Paul's, Sramban. When I was in Form 5, Vesak, we came to KL, to the Brickfields Temple, and we went into the shrine room. And there was this very tall monk, I can remember. This was the first time I met K. Sri Dhammananda. This was in 1955. And then I got a scholarship to become a teacher in England. I'm a Kirby trained teacher. This was in my second year, 1959. I was invited by a Christian group to explain to them about Buddhism. I can guarantee you not one of them became Buddhist as a result of that. They were completely confused. That's how little I knew. I knew there was a thing called Four Noble Truths, and I was spilling this out with no understanding. And you see how karma works. Huh? I was now about 19 years old. I'm in England. All right? No opportunities to learn Buddhism. But when I came back, I knew what my limitations were. So I knew where I had to go to look. That's a very important starting point.
At Kirby, you said you had this realization.
Yes.
You needed to
Yes. And I think also it's karmic. From the time I was very young, it was an emotional attraction to the Buddha and the need to want to know more. All right? And these needs were manifesting themselves in different ways in England, in Kelantan. And then I get the opportunity to study in MU, and that meant that I could come to the Brickfields Vihara. There I became close to the chief because I was studying English. Even then I could write very well. All right? And chief needed somebody to put his thoughts on paper. And here I was, a university student, plenty of time to spare. This was 1963 to 66. They were important years in my development. That's the time I got to know Chief. And I suspect Chief recognized that here was a guy who could serve Buddhism. So he spent a lot of time with me. I'm very grateful for that. But still, I was a student. After my university days, I was posted to Terengganu. In Terengganu, there was a Chinese group. They found out through the school I was teaching that I was a Buddhist. Could you come and share Buddhism with us? By this time, Chief's books were available, and I was using those books. And then they decided that they wanted to meet Chief. Chief said, of course. He and a group of about 5 others drove all the way, and that was the Terengganu people's first contact with Theravada Buddhism. When Chief came into the picture, he attracted a group of young people, Karunatyo, Goseng Chai. They followed him back to KL, meaning they found a job in KL, yes, and became associated with BMS. They made huge contributions to the development of Buddhism in Kuala Lumpur under BMS. Finished my contract with the government, and I applied to teach in Klang High School. I was living in Section 14 PJ. It meant evenings I could spend time with Chief. Chief used to give me lots and lots of work to do. That was my learning process. This was in 1967-68. In that time, Chief used to give talks, and suddenly he would say, "You talk." I don't know what to talk. No, you're not prepared. That's the way we were trained. A lot of other speakers of my generation who went under Chief, had the same experience. But he gave us that courage. He threw us into the deep end of the pool. I think that's the traditional way of training monks. I think Chief was using that system. One year, Vesak Day, there were at least 2,000-3,000 people around the Bodhi tree. He turns around and he tells me, "I have a cough, you talk." People started calling me to give talks. So what I did was, I make notes. And I would go and I would rehearse the talk with him. Took me about 20-30 minutes to go through the talk with him, and he gave me that 20-30 minutes. That's what I'm grateful for. And Chief bought me an overage protector because nobody used that those days. That was very advanced, all right? And it helped me a lot because the notes were all there, all approved by Chief, so I was no danger of going wrong. And he would sit like that, and he would just go like that, right till the end. And when I finish, he'll say, that means okay. That means okay. Otherwise, he will tell me what it is. From day one, even before I came into the picture, Chief was very interested in publications. He would get people to write little booklets, shared his ideas and told them to write, and then they come back to him. In my case, what happened was, he gives a talk on Friday. This talk is recorded, transcribed. My job would be to clean it up and make it readable, presentable. The great advantage of that was I was learning. He spent a lot of time. He was very patient. I know he was patient with people like Victor V, with Benilya, because he saw the value. Here were young people who had the potential, and he invested his time in them. So in the process of writing those books, rewriting these books, now let's take Dhammapada for example. I read it 16 times, looking for faults, expanding.
How long did that take? Just for that?
A couple of years, maybe 2 years, I think about 2 years. So we are all learning from the same factory. My basic core Buddhism, my attitude to Buddhism, my style of presenting Buddhism, all goes to Chief.
Did it lead you to explore other literature?
Oh yeah, because the interest started growing. And so I started reading whatever I could lay my hands on. People were calling me more and more often to give talks, especially at universities, which meant I needed info. So the more I read, the more it enriched me, but whatever I read, whatever I wrote, without fail I'd go back to Chief to get it approved. It was until very late that I was sort of weaned from Chief and did things on my own.
At which point did you not actually have to rehearse in front of Chief?
I used to keep going to him. I'll tell you why. Because interfaith was coming into the picture. And I cannot afford to misrepresent Buddhism. Every point would be rehearsed with Chief. Then when I go out and talk, I know nobody can point a finger at me because it was approved by the Master himself.
What were some of the highlights? What were some of the challenges that you encountered as a Dhammaduta?
I have a feeling that because Chief was behind me all the time, a lot of the rough edges was made smooth. Well, if there was problems, it would have been the time constraint. As a lay person, bringing up a family, juggling a career, at that time I was also very much involved in the theatre scene in Kuala Lumpur, either as a director or an actor or whatever. On the other hand, coming home and servicing the family, and then working in ITM as a lecturer. So it took a lot of sacrifice and getting the priorities right. That was more my challenge. Because I wasn't a professional, I wasn't a monk. And I was sharing the Dhamma, working with Chief and learning a huge amount from him. Plus Chief, of course, was so much 21st century. He could cut through all kinds of superstition. He always knew that his purpose was not to present Theravada Sinhalese Buddhism, but Buddhism as the Buddha taught it. That was Chief's greatest claim to fame. That is why he was able to inspire the Chinese. He was always concerned with the Buddha's teaching, the original words.
So you mentioned something that I think many people will be able to appreciate, which is trying to juggle your devotion to the Dhamma at the same time trying to grow professionally. And I believe at that time you had a young family?
Very young, yeah. My eldest was born in 1969. By that time I was already into Buddhism. I was already giving talks. I had just come back, got a job in ITM. We had 3 kids, a girl, a boy and a girl. Handling them, getting them involved with the temple. My wife, being a Buddhist herself, was very helpful. She understood what it meant. She took part of the burden of bringing up a Buddhist family.
I see. So that helped?
Helped a lot.
You didn't have to make tough choices?
No, I didn't have to, because her father had been like that too in Singapore.
How did learning the Dhamma actually help you deal with the challenges of a professional life?
The one word that comes to mind is anicca. I always knew it will pass. Yeah, no matter how big, how difficult, it won't be there forever. All right? There's always Chief I could go to. He gives advice, or his presence, his understanding was very helpful.
So he was like a counselor as well?
More like a father figure. In fact, I remember when I went to Australia, just before we left, my wife told Chief, "You were the father he never had." I told you I lost my father when I was 12. So, how did I overcome problems? One, my own understanding of Buddhism, it will pass, and anicca, right? No ego. Although I look like I got a huge ego, I never expect reward, never expect it to be better anyway. Right? I had a tough childhood. How can things get worse? That kind of attitude towards life. And then on the other side, there was Chief to give me the moral support and understanding and recognition.
An example of where you encountered problems or struggles in your professional life, what kind of advice he actually gave you?
The greatness of Chief again. In the 70s, during the Ramadan month, they had a Quran reading competition. They had a huge show on one aspect of Islam. And for 5 years, I did that show, involving 200 students at ITM.
That's like a national event, right?
International event. Here I'm doing this and I'm getting all worried. And then he says, what you are doing, does it encourage people to do bad? No. Does it encourage people to do good? Does it make them more religious? Yes. Then what's your problem? Forget the religion, concentrate on the goodness that is engendered.
What do you think are the qualities of an effective Dhamma speaker?
Very knowledgeable. And there's no end to the knowledge that he can gain, not only about Buddhism, but all aspects of knowledge. And every aspect of knowledge is somehow connected to Buddhism, because Buddhism is the Dharma. Of course, today's people have it very easy. We had to go through huge libraries and read an entire book to get one gem. Of course, we could go back to Chief. Chief was the easiest. Today, it's very easy. You just Google it and the answer is there.
But on the other hand, there's this danger. How authentic or how genuine?
Absolutely. That is why we keep saying, go back to the Nikayas. You cannot make any claim without knowing where it came from.
So does this mean therefore that one actually needs to pick up Pali then?
I myself am not a Pali scholar, but we are living in fortunate times where there's so much translation. And the latest one, Reverend Sujato's, it's so beautifully written. Chief will always say, you cannot substitute the Pali. There are nuances which cannot be translated. Karma, dharma, dukkha. Dukkha. It's better to use the Pali word and try and understand its meaning that way than go through English. But today, thanks to very good translations, very good writers from the West, we are in a very karmically privileged position where we can get by without Pali. They have done such a good job, we are pretty safe ground.
And what would your advice be for somebody who is contemplating to become a Dhammaduta?
Over the years, we thought it would be possible to train Dhamma speakers. Yeah, and the basics we knew were public speaking skills and intelligence to be able to read a lot and grasp a lot. But in the training programs that we conducted, I learned one thing: you must also have a karmic background. We have met people who just took to it just like that. Then there were some who were so stilted. They did everything right, but the soul was not there. Even monks. You see some monks, they inspire you. It comes naturally. The Dharma is out there, and you are the channel through which the Dhamma flows. That cannot be trained.
But if not for the program, you may not even discover the truth.
I think maybe we go back to the old traditional way. You get associated with the temple, the opportunities arise in the temple. There you test, like my generation Dhamma speakers, they got involved with BMS, they got involved with Chief, they got involved with the temple. Then they went outstations. As they went out, opportunities arose and they grew into it.
You were very fortunate to have Chief as your guiding pole. But what about the Dhammadutas of the present day? Who do they have?
Most Dhammadutas would go to monks, senior monks, and we have lots and lots of skilled Dhamma speakers who are monks. They are extremely knowledgeable, they are available, Google is always there with its reservations. You go there, they will summarize it for you, and then you go back to the Nikaya to confirm for yourself that this is indeed so. And if you cannot do that, then you got the monks that you can go to. Venerable Jayasaro and so on. The channels are there. I think 21st century is a Buddhist century because the truth can be challenged. It's there for you to see for yourself. It's more accessible to more people.
What are your hopes and aspirations for the Buddha Sasana?
Really, Dhammo have rakkati Dhammacharim. He who lives by the Dhamma is protected by the Dharma. I will share with you this. My wife and I, we went to Sydney. There we caught up with Venerable Mahinda, who has a beautiful place. My wife and I looked at Venerable and said, Venerable, this is all well and good, but who is going to take over when you go? He looked at us and he said, why do I care who takes over when I go? And that was so meaningful. When you have the opportunity, you serve the Dhamma. Don't worry about what's happening tomorrow. Worry about now. The Dhamma knows how to look after itself. That was about 20 years ago when he told us that. The truth is so strong there. Today, I have a feeling that the Dhamma is in a far better position than maybe 100 years ago. 100 years ago when Sinhalese monks and Burmese monks were picking up enough English to bring Theravada Buddhism to the West, today it's there, it's flowing. Okay? So I don't worry. I say the Dhamma is in very good hands. And there's a lot more knowledge in the world today. I think the human population has increased its intelligence level, meaning that it is in a better position to absorb the Dhamma. Today, even my grandchildren, they want to know why. And it is part of the huge outside world. We no longer think in terms of Asian and European. To me, the Dhamma is everybody's property. So I have a lot of faith that the Dhamma will look after itself. If I started all over again today, would I do the same thing? I think no. For that matter, even if Chief had been born in a different time, would he have made the same kind of contribution? I wonder. I think the Dharma finds the right person for the right time. And the right people manifest themselves, and then when they move on, others come in different manifestations.
The main thing is that the wheel keeps turning. The Dhamma.
Absolutely. The Dhamma wheel will go and anicca will come. Things that we hold today will get forgotten, become irrelevant, and will move on. But we are moving towards a civilization which is more knowledgeable. I mean, we have all our basic lobha, dosa, moha, yeah. But I think we are living in enlightened times.
More enlightened.
More enlightened.